Welcome to the Amphibian Press podcast. I'm Sarah Voris, and with me today is Derek Borne, a sci-fi author. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been a while since I've done a little interview like this.
Yeah, it's always fun to get to know someone new for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
likewise.
so tell me a little bit about your series, The Ultimate Agent.
So the Ultimate Agent is where superheroes and spies combine. It's where a couple of characters who have different backgrounds, one who's been with an agency and one who is kind of not necessarily brought up to be in the agency. He kind of just falls into it. And the thing with this agency is that they're able to actually give people abilities in order to fight the other side that actually has the ability to do the same thing. So it's kind of like an arms race of
Mhm.
abilities and superpowers, so to speak.
That's fun, and it's nice when you have that the scope where you can really explore a lot of different abilities.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't get bored as a writer for sure.
Yep. It was hard in the beginning to kind of go, okay, this superpower's been done. This superpower's been done. This one's been done way too much. So I kind of thought, well, what if I made it that you could actually have a cocktail of abilities?
Mhm.
But then in coming at that angle, I said, well, also, how many superpowers could the human body handle?
Mhm.
So it's kind of there's the ethics to it. There's the whole, what does that do on a genetic level? Would that affect the person? And then just it's crazy with how their lives continue through the series.
I like the that sort of drawback thing because I feel like when you start delving into a little bit more of the sci-fi side of genetics and genetic modification, you get this it's almost like a magic system where
Yeah,
you want there to be a balance and you want it to make sense, but you also want it to be a little bit fantastical and fun. Um,
of course.
so how much of like real genetics, so to speak, um, do you really put into your books?
When it comes to, say, word choice, when it comes to scientific terms and things like that, I will use that and try to do as much research as I can. On the other side of that, I am very Marvel-esque because we're at the point where people believe in a giant green rage monster or a guy that can create a super tech suit. Um, you kind of have to have that bit of disbelief in
Mhm.
order to believe it. So it's fun and kind of doing it that way because as my series goes on from the main novel to my mini series that I'm just finishing up now, sort of,
Mhm.
I get into okay, what could you also do that may have resulted in some of the myths and monsters and legends that are out there in the world.
Mhm. That's really fun because I'm a super X-Files fan. Uh,
Okay.
and I definitely got a little bit of that like monster of the week
Hmm.
vibe off of your mini series, which I just think is so much fun because it's like it's good to explore the your cast of characters and the
Oh,
things
of
they
course.
go through, but it's also really fun to explore the world a little bit more.
Hmm.
Both I think as a writer and as a reader because you just get that much more deep into the world building.
Yeah, and it was fun in that regard because the second book takes place 6 months after the first novel.
Okay.
And there was a line in there that I put in saying, the last 6 months have been kind of crazy with all the bad guys we put away. And I got into writing the third book and I thought, you know what, I'm not quite done with these characters yet.
Mhm.
And I wanted to go back and explore those 6 months and what would happen. Um, and that's where the UA classified miniseries came from. And they've found out there's more than one nefarious organization that's doing some pretty bad things with genetics.
Which I mean, I guess that's not so much fiction anymore, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we've got scientists that are creating super mosquitoes and reintroduced them back into, I think it was in Europe or something.
Yeah, yeah,
And now they've created the super mosquito.
because we need that in our life.
It's like in the latest book that I'm doing, I'm releasing on Tuesday, the Kraken Files. Uh, I always love Jurassic Park because it's always been about ethics
Mhm.
and the question of, well, yeah, you can create dinosaurs, but should you?
Right.
And it's kind of the same way with a lot of things in my book. It's like, well, yeah, you can do this, but is it really a good idea?
Yeah. Well, that's like when that whole thing about the head transplant was
Yeah.
man
Oh.
was just like sort of quietly disappeared and didn't happen. Like I I don't know if you saw one of the more recent X Files movies that came out. Like I'm just gonna like totally nerd out here for a minute, but
That's fine.
um that's exactly what part of the plot was about was a
Mm-hmm.
head transplant, and I'm like, we made a whole movie about why this is a bad idea. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just bizarre, and I mean, I think it's amazing to explore technology and you know biomedical engineering on a
Mm-hmm.
really deep level because there are a lot of things that are going to come up, and the quote unquote bad guys are going to delve into it too. So it's like you kind of want to understand it, but on the other hand, it's like, are are we the bad guys
Yeah.
now?
Are we being bad because we're not allowing it to happen?
Yeah, like where do we stand here?
Yeah.
So you did mention Marvel and a certain angry green person.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite like comic book character, or like Marvel versus DC? Like where do you stand with that?
I'm definitely more of a Marvel fan than DC because I find DC their heroes are so overpowered.
Yes.
There's really no, at least for me, connection to their characters because they just seem like, I mean, to have very few weaknesses, really.
Right.
Meanwhile, you've got Marvel's characters who are taking, well, not real human people, but using those aspects of humanity and throwing them into these situations. Like almost everything that happens to a Marvel character is an accident
Hmm.
or wasn't really planned to some degree. You might have a little bit of like prophetic character background, whatever. But for the most part, I mean, I've always been a Spider-Man fan because he's always been an underdog.
Yeah.
His entire life has just been, oh man, my uncle died. Oh man, now I've lost MJ. Oh, well, I gotta do homework. Oh, and I gotta make some money, and I gotta pay for my apartment. It's like that is a real person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I've always really loved the X-Men myself.
Hmm.
And I think part of it is sort of playing off of what you go into with your series, where it's like, there's all these different superpowers that these people can have, and
Hmm.
sometimes they're really awesome and sometimes they really suck.
And the list is endless.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I guess talk about being worried about whether something's been done. um,
Yeah, pretty
there's
much.
probably an X-Man out there that has it. But yeah, that's definitely something I've really enjoyed.
I've especially laughed at the fact that they have a character that can basically eat whatever to get out of whatever situation.
Yep.
I'm like, really? Well, I guess that kind of works to some degree. And then you've got another guy that can tear off his arms and use them as weapons. Like, what?
I know that you can see there's a point when it's like, okay, did you just have a hat that you were pulling
Yeah,
things out
basically.
of?
Let's spin the wheel this week.
Yeah. So to sort of switch gears a little bit, so you're a contractor in your real life, your daily life.
I used to be.
Used to be.
I
Okay.
I have to update my website a little bit.
Okay.
Um, actually, my dad and I got out of construction.
Mhm.
We now sell high quality olive oil and balsamic
Oh, cool.
as
That's
a
a
day
switch.
job. Yeah, huge switch. I love it though because I'm super social and I love to meet new people and
Mhm.
it's a great product and yeah, that's my day job. At 9 to 5 a
That's
week.
crazy.
So yeah.
Well, my original question was going to be, because I do contract work, but as an archaeologist, so
Oh, cool.
it's there's some heavy overlap for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was just curious how that affects your writing, or at least writing the first few books, which I know you did when you were younger. But
Hmm.
as you developed the storylines, did it affect your writing because it's such a sort of fast-paced problem-solving type of job?
Yeah, it's fast paced. I found when I started writing these books at 14 and I looked at it later in life, I just went, you had no idea what you were doing. Because at 14 is like, who really knows romance at that age? I mean, come on. Um,
I mean, you think you do. You think you know everything.
you think you do. You think you know everything, but it just, yeah. The more I worked, and the more I saw how the world worked, and what people go through on a day to day basis. Like I see how hard even my parents work just to
Mhm.
make ends meet. Um, it really helped build the characters a bit more. So now that I'm older and I look at the characters when they were first written, I said, you know what, there was the skeleton, there was the bones, and now I'm actually adding like real guts to these people.
Mhm.
Like, what are they going through? What are they thinking about? How does this affect them in this way? And I find just being in the workforce, and now that I'm meeting even more people, um, it's helping me to really see where people are coming from. Um, so I can really just add, and I mean, it doesn't really matter what you do for your day job. You're always taking bits and pieces of people you meet and putting them in your book.
Yeah, I mean that's the question. Everyone asks like, "Oh, do you put your friends in your books?" It's like, well, I mean, whether it's conscious or not, I'm I think we all do,
Oh, of
to
course.
to a degree, and hopefully we change the names to protect the guilty. But
Yes. There may be a couple of bullies from high school that meet their demise in the Ultimate Agent too.
that's fun. I had a contest when I think it was the second book in my fantasy series came out, and it was a contest for I guess a reader to be written into the next few books
Oh,
as like a side supporting character bit part
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of thing, and it has been the most challenging and the most fun thing
Hmm.
um, in a lot of ways. And I think part of it was because it's like, okay, this person won it. I can't like necessarily just kill them off
Mm.
or whatever. Um, so it's sort of trying to wiggle that around. But it's a lot easier when you can just be like, oh, I'm gonna kill off that jerk who cut me off in
Yeah,
traffic or whatever it is.
yeah. What's been fun though is now that I've got a reader group even on Facebook
Mhm.
and so many awesome fans, because there's a spy organization within my series,
Yeah,
I'm able to use their names for agents, and they have no problems with it at all.
that's awesome.
They're like, "Man, I get to be in a book. This is awesome." Even if it's just like a name drop, or they have like one line of dialogue just to say they reported something. They're just like, "Oh, this is amazing."
Mhm.
So,
That's really fun because like I've noticed some people who have Patreons.
hmm,
You know, I've sort of dabbled in that, but it's hard when you're doing novel length work. I think
mm,
to find a way to like actually give them something that's worth paying for. Uh,
yeah,
at least I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm a slow writer, so
that's
but
right. Me
yeah,
too.
people do that. Like they'll put their patrons' names in, and I just think that's so much fun, and it really goes back to like the community and the engagement of storytelling,
Yeah.
which I think we've sort of stepped away from in some ways.
Yeah, I see so many authors now that are just pumping out book after book after book within like 3 months. They've got 4 books out, and I'm going,
Yeah,
how do they do it?
and some
Like,
of
at
them
what?
are good, but
Yeah, some of them are great, but I mean, at some point, do you feel like you're actually rehashing characters?
yeah, I've definitely read work from very prolific authors who are like mainstream big five authors.
Mm,
Um, and I'll read all their books and it's like, okay, this seems almost word for word
mm-hmm,
a scene from this book 10 books ago or something.
mm-hmm.
And I mean I guess I probably am guilty of something similar too, but I think it's much more likely when you are pumping out book after book after book. Thank God I'm slow, I guess.
And it's hard when almost everything's been done
Mhm.
too.
Right.
It's trying to find the different angle. It's difficult, but it can be done.
Mhm.
I love the fact that you mentioned that you're an archaeologist because I actually have a dinosaur book that I'm working on.
Oh, nice.
It's been a passion project for a long time because ever since I read Jurassic Park, I just said I really want to do a dinosaur book at some point.
Mhm.
And it's kind of basically time rifts are involved,
Oh, cool.
where a couple of teenagers get thrown through one because they discover it that an organization's been keeping secret.
Mhm.
And it's I'm very excited to see what people think because I'm coming at things very differently than what society says dinosaurs are or
Right.
were. Because really, you can talk about what dinosaurs were all you want, but man, as far as we know, was not alive when dinosaurs were,
Mhm.
to see if everything that we've come to know now is completely true.
Well, I read an article, it like popped up in my Facebook feed or something, and I skimmed it briefly, and I can't remember the source, and I haven't heard about it since, which makes me think this like they might have a crock, but it did say that there was genetic testing that came back on, I think it was a Triceratops or something,
Hmm.
that was one of the Triassic, um,
Yep.
and it came back with like 15,000 years ago for a
Hmm.
date, which is like we were around definitely then.
Yeah, you never
And
know.
yeah, now I'm gonna have to go find that article and see if it was actually real or not. But yeah, I mean, dates are always changing, but that's a really fun thing to explore, especially as we are finding out more because
Yep.
there's so much more information that you can play with.
And I know they've actually discovered still living tissue
Hmm.
from a Triceratops horn.
Maybe that's what they were testing, actually.
Yeah, because I remember from the article that I read and a video that I saw, they were saying, how could something be millions of years old if the tissue is still living?
Yeah.
It's like, are you really stretching things just to make it
Yeah.
sound, hey, this is amazing. It's millions of years old.
That's
So you really
crazy.
don't know. We really don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've scratched the surface, really.
We think we know. It's a
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah.
Now, is that is the dinosaur book, is that in the same universe as the Ultimate Agent series or no?
I'm going to use my spy lingo and say that's classified.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. So speaking of classified, so the initial main antagonist in your book is a similar organization in Russia, correct?
Hmm. Yes.
So is that like set in Cold War era or in today?
It's modern day.
Okay.
Yeah, modern day. Part of the background of one of the characters that really becomes the main villain has something happened in his past, which is kind of around the Cold War era, sort of.
Okay.
Um, yeah, but I won't get too much into that because again, classified. But
That's fine. Yeah. Um, so do you have a favorite character? I know like we're not supposed to pick favorites, but with such
mm,
a diverse cast and all these powers to draw from, do you have like a pet?
so the character of Devin is very much like me
Hmm.
because he's always talking about food. But other than him, I've actually really liked rewriting because I did a lot of rewriting, anyways. When I went to publish a character in the second book named Spencer Raymond, where he kind of gets thrown into an accident. Again, very like Marvel. But when I first wrote him, he was okay. But when I came back to him, I said, "Oh man, I can do this with him. I can do this, this, this. Like show, like how is he dealing with all these changes
Hmm.
better now that I actually had an editor and was able to afford having an editor and everything. Like I learned so much more even from that aspect, just of how to really tighten things up and really make the characters sing.
Yeah,
So he was a lot of fun.
that's that's so true too. I feel like, I mean, as much as it's our voices, having an editor can really help you nail and distill some
Hmm.
some aspects of our characters that we might not notice, because we're like too entrenched in it.
Yeah. Oh, and even there's still some things when I'm writing these little short stories for the classified miniseries,
Mhm.
and I have my editor who says, "Well, would they really say that?" Or you know what? I think this would be a perfect spot to put this because I know she would call her this way because
Mhm.
they have a bond. And I'm going, man, yeah, you almost know my characters as well as I do now.
Yeah, right.
So,
That's always nice too to have someone who actually like is on your wavelength.
yep,
I have a critique partner who's like that, and it's like, I mean, we still have our disagreements, but
yeah,
for
that's
the
gonna
most
happen.
part, yeah, it's like, thank you. You actually took what I needed out of my brain and gave it to
Hmm.
me. I couldn't find it.
Yeah. What's nice too is for the editor that I've had for the miniseries, I actually did a co-write with her for one of the books. So that's the one that's the Michigan Dog Man.
Okay.
So there's me and Rowena Reed. So because, like you said, we were on the same wavelength, she knew my characters. She was a little nervous to write my characters
Yeah.
and really get into their heads. But likewise, we were able to introduce her brand new character that hasn't been in anything before, and
Ooh.
so that was really fun.
I don't think I could. I mean, I'm sure I could. That's not that's me being avoidant, but I don't think I could really ever co-author something like even
No, it's a lot of fun.
like we have a shared universe and we share some characters. So like she'll borrow my main character and
Right.
one of her side characters is my main's ex-girlfriend.
Okay.
That's like lots of it's really fun. Um, but like I think our personalities are very strong, but in kind of opposing ways sometimes. And
Mm.
thankfully, we both know this. I think it'd be really fun to try and co-author something, but I don't know if we could do it.
I totally understand it from the way of, this is my baby
Yeah.
and I don't want to share. But at the same time, I've always loved how Marvel does crossovers.
That's true.
And so when I was talking to Rowena, I said, you know what? I know you've talked about this character before. I would love to have him play with my guys.
Mhm.
And she was game for it. So
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like fan fiction, like writing your own fan fiction in some way.
yeah, yeah,
So you're like, it's just like a sandbox. You can just throw whatever you want in, and
exactly.
yeah, that's true. Maybe she and I in like 10 years when we're a little calmer, we can do that.
A little more senile.
Yeah, right. When we've forgotten all the disagreements we've had about.
Yeah, right.
Uh, so other than obviously the dinosaur thing that you mentioned, that's classified.
Yes.
What's next for you? You mentioned that you have a new release coming out. Actually, the day that this recording is going live.
Yeah, so on Tuesday, the Kraken Files
Mhm.
is coming out. So far in the mini series, I've had the Bigfoot Files, the Mothman Files, the Loch Ness Files. I've done the Michigan Dogman, and now the Kraken is something that when I saw a perfect picture for it, I thought, you know what? I'm totally doing a Kraken because not enough people do books with Krakens, and why the heck not?
Well, it's like you can delve into a little bit of the Lovecraftian stuff too, which is so fun.
Oh yeah, but it's fun in a way of taking, okay, here's this creature. Now, how can I fit it into my universe to make it work?
Mhm.
And my only concern is how are people going to take it? Because there's a lot of people who go all fantastical, into the mythology and all that stuff. But I don't really have a lot of, like really, there's no magic or anything like that in my series.
Mhm.
So it's kind of okay. How can I do this with genetics and still
That's
make it badass?
yeah. Well, because I always struggled. Um, this is like the most controversial thing I've ever said. I've watched almost none of the Avengers movies. I've watched a few.
I gotta go. Uh, okay.
um, I'm I'm getting caught up very slowly. But I was always really entertained by how they could sort of mix in this like high tech, Tony Stark stuff going on, and then
Yep.
the genetics of the Hulk, and then also the God thing
Hmm.
with Asgard, and I just thought that was really interesting because you don't often see sci-fi and fantasy like the magic and the tech
Yeah. True.
so seamlessly integrated like that.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it's the Kraken could definitely be a place where you run into that because it does have a lot more mythos surrounding it than sort of your average monster.
Yeah. At the same time, you have to remember that when Marvel came out with all the different characters, it basically got to the point where they put them together and said, "Hey, listen, this is happening. This works for us."
Yeah, it
So,
works.
and
Make
people just accepted it.
it work. Well, and I think too, like we've gotten to a point with both sci-fi and fantasy where we really are genre blending.
Hmm.
Actually, not even within sci-fi and fantasy, outside of it as well. Um, and I think that's really fun. I think the ability to play with the genres and really turn them about and inside out, and I I think it's really creative in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
though not always easy.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I will ever get into the magic
Mhm.
aspect of it. I know because now that I've shared characters with Rowena, and she's going on to write some magic stuff in her series. So in a way, through universes, you could say that I guess there is,
Mhm.
but I don't. I just don't focus on it.
Yeah,
So
your folks don't have to deal with it.
yeah,
So is there a theme? I mean, obviously there's the superhero thing and whatnot, but is there a theme that is sort of underlying all of your work, whether it be, friendship or good versus evil or something like that?
there's a line in the first book that I always try to remember in each book, and just kind of either word it in a different way or still have the lesson kind of be there. Um, it's a line that for every time I post a teaser, people are like, "Oh, I love this line," and it just says, it doesn't matter how many people you save. It doesn't matter if you defeat the villain. If you have the ability to help someone else, you do it no matter the sacrifice.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
Because really, you could say, "Oh yeah, I saved like 10 people today," or I got rid of the bad guy. But really, that's not what counts.
Right.
It's like, what are you doing as a human being to
And
help the other person?
that translates really well into like everyday life too, because
Yeah,
we can't, there's no defeating the villain in the real world necessarily,
no,
because there's always another one, or
yep.
you know there's no such thing as necessarily true good and true evil,
Hmm.
though sometimes it looks like
Well, it's like I met someone yesterday, and they kind of tore a strip off my wife and I,
Mm,
and it just I looked at her and I just thought, you know what? What happened in your life to make you that way?
mhm,
Like I didn't fire back anything just because not the time or place.
mhm.
But I went away and I just thought, man, I kind of feel sorry.
Yeah.
Really, you could go on all day and just, repeat what they said to us and be like, oh man, I can't believe they said that or whatever. But really, it's just, people have things that happen that you don't see behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a cry for help. Who knows?
Well, I think too, I mean, we've all been in a place where we've maybe gone too far. Someone just caught us at the wrong moment, and as much as we want to think we're perfect, none of us
That
are.
happens more times than not. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I've definitely, like, I got into an altercation sort of recently, and it felt really good in the moment to be like, oh, come on, you asshole. But like, I'm not gonna lie, it definitely felt nice.
Mm,
But like, even though at the time I felt like the dude deserved it, like, was that really
mm,
helpful? Was it?
yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
you know and I just think, being able to take a second and having a moment of empathy and thinking like, well, if it's not really being helpful, if you're not putting good out, maybe just keep your mouth shut for a minute.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like even with the characters in my miniseries, it's kind of a thing where there's always that saying, people fear what they don't understand.
Mhm.
But the thing they leave out of that is that no one takes the time to understand.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, you get to know people, get to understand them instead of just writing them off.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, I mean, so obviously in my work I meet so many different people, both coworkers or landowners,
Mm,
or people who I have to work with every day for a month or something, um, to get this project to come together and be finished and work the way it's supposed to work and have everyone be happy. And I met a lot of people who I just did not get along with.
mm-hmm,
I've met a lot of awesome people too, but at the end of the day, it's like you kind of have to figure out where your common ground is. Maybe try
mm-hmm.
to stick to that if you can't, you know, go go any further. Um, and I think for the most part, it's been fine. There's
Mm-hmm.
You're always going to get someone, but I think that's definitely an important thing to keep in mind, that line.
Yeah, and I remember when my dad used to do commercial construction, he had one guy that was Serbian doing I forget which job, and then another guy who was Croatian. Now they don't get along at all, right? Because
Yeah, that's
war from years and years ago. So these two guys came at each other and they just started bringing up all this stuff from years ago.
oh
And
god.
eventually it got to the point where my dad said, okay, you over there, go back to your job. You go back to work.
Mhm.
And then later he's talking to both of them. He's going, why do you bring your problems over here?
There's no need.
Right? There's no need. And this happened how long ago? And you're still like, did you actually fight him or is there actually an issue?
Right.
Right? It's just, but you have to remember people, they have their background, they have their culture, they have the reasons for why they are. So it's yeah, again, it's stuff to pull from for whatever we write.
Yeah. Well, so where can people find you online, or are you doing any conventions or conferences coming up?
I wish I had the funds to do conferences. I am a humble olive oil salesman. Um, mainly Amazon is where you can find me. Sorry?
I said, never thought I'd hear that. I'm a humble olive oil salesman.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't say it makes me a millionaire, but I help people stay healthy. So, yeah, mainly just Amazon. I have my website, www.derekborne.weebly.com. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, sometimes on Twitter, although I feel like every time I tweet, it just goes into the void.
Yeah, Twitter's basically shouting into the void and hoping
Yeah,
the void answers back.
yeah, pretty much. Did I pick the right hashtag? I hope so.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I think that's about all the time we have today.
Alrighty.
Definitely, keep us updated as more of the classified files come out, and
Oh, I will.
as your agents continue on their perilous adventures.
We have a monster after the Kraken that's actually from mythology, so to speak.
Woo, yay. Yeah,
Something Greek.
this has been the Amphibian Press podcast. I'm Sarah Boris, and with me today was Derek Borne, awesome sci-fi author, superhero aficionado, and very tolerant of me not watching the Avengers. So
I expect to hear your thoughts on Age of Ultron. Wait, how far are you into it?
the first one.
Okay, I expect to hear your thoughts on Age of Ultron next week.
Okay. I will get a 3-page report drafted probably this evening.
Excellent. Make sure you stamp it classified.
Okay, I will. Thank you so much for listening.